Can you hear me okay? Hi. Thank you so much for still being here, especially if you've been here from this morning. It's an amazing venue, an amazing place, but we're really grateful that you're here to join us. This is Cultivating Wealth, Unlocking Financial Abundance, Strategies for Cultivating a Positive Money Mindset. My name is Marisa Bate. I'm a journalist and an author, and I have the huge pleasure of hosting today's panel. We don't have much time, and we've got a lot to cover. So I'll just give you a run through of the things we want to get through in the next kind of 35 minutes. We want to talk about conquering financial fears, what shapes our attitudes towards money, the economics of parenthood, exploring that very delicate balance between living in the present and planning for the future, and asking the very important question, is there such a thing as an acceptable indulgence? To provide honest insight and intelligent guidance on these topics, we have this wonderful panel. To my left, we have Emma Maslin, certified money coach, personal finance speaker, and founder of The Money Whisperer. Then we have Nafisa Bakar, who's the CEO of Amalia, a media platform amplifying the voices of Muslim women. And she is also the author of How to Make Money, an honest guide to going from an idea to a six-figure business. And finally, we have Kia Commodore, who's the founder of Pennies to Pounds platform. Sorry, it's all those P's. A financial hub for young people. So three super informed, brilliant women to guide us for this. I feel like we're on a speed round. We're not. We're aware of the clock. If I do look at my phone, it's because I'm trying to keep to schedule. So I which is much a question for me as for anyone else, what is the most common financial fears that you see? What are the ones that really stand out? Because I know I have plenty, but what are the ones that really crop up in your work? Do you want to start, Emma?
I'm happy to start. I think social media plays a huge role in a lot of the fears that people come to me with. And I'd say one of the big ones is the fear of not keeping up with our peers, with our friends. And it is a generational problem now, because keeping up with the Joneses used to be the people in our immediate network, our neighbours, our work colleagues, our friends. And now that network is worldwide through social media. So yeah, that's what I would say is a really, really big one, that feeling of, I haven't quite got what I should have by this age, or I'm not good enough in some way because other people seem to have their shit together. They have stuff that I'm still striving for. So it's a really big problem in society.
Yes, we don't see the mechanics of how people get that stuff. We just see them with the stuff. Nafisa, what would you say?
I think for me, I've spoken to lots of founders over the years, mentored lots of founders as well, and both at a personal finance level, but also at a business level, I tend to see people, which links to this, struggling to imagine big financial goals for themselves because of all the how do you get there. And there's loads of reasons why. There's how we're socialized into thinking and talking about money and thinking what we could have for ourselves. And there's also structural issues and systemic issues that are projected back onto women in particular that then get defined as things like imposter syndrome. And so we individualize a lot of our challenges around money when actually a lot of the challenges we face are around how we're socialized, both as how women see themselves in professional spaces, but also what we think we could go after.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'd echo both of these women, but I'd also add, I speak to a lot of young people, and a lot of the fears, I'd say, comes from what they've been taught at home. So sometimes I meet people who say, I'll never get a credit card. Mum and dad said it's terrible, I'll never get a credit card, I can never do that, overdrafts, never. And then on the flip side, I've spoken to people who are in a lot of debt because they've seen that growing up. So they have this fear that they will never be good with money because it's what they've learned or it's what they've seen and that's what they've copied, that they just can't see themselves ever being any other way.
Yeah, we will get on to a bit more about kind of what we learn and how that. But before we get there, where do you start then? What's your kind of starting point with somebody? If you could tell somebody one thing, maybe someone who's feeling like, well, where do I begin? Do you have a magic top tip?
So I work as a coach in this space, and for everybody who comes to me, we have to do a bit of rewinding. And you've hit the nail on the head there, Kia. A lot of our belief system, so what we believe to be true about money, is all programmed into our supercomputer up here before we're 7 years old. So everything that we see, hear, experience, predominantly our parents as our main caregivers by the time we get to 7. And I'm seeing some faces like this in the audience. Yeah, it's really young. But our brains are programmed, so our belief system is formed while we're very young in those formative years. And the starting point to change your outcomes now is to really get to grips with what your belief system is. And to the extent that you've got some faulty programming in that computer system up here, working to unlearn some of the learning that you took on when you were younger and do some rewiring so that the behaviours that you have as an adult are more sensible. And it's as simple as that. It's not rocket science, but we all behave in a way that is defined by the very narrow lens through which we see the world of money. And that lens is conditioned through our parents and the learnings that we had when we were very young. So yeah, understanding, getting to know your belief system. And one top tip I would leave on that is, if you were to spend the next week with a little pad by you or your notes function on your phone, and as you go through your day, make a note of every interaction that you have that has some sort of financial bearings. That might be buying your lunch, or somebody saying to you, do you want to go out for lunch, when you've already packed your packed lunch and you're like, no, I don't really want to because I've already packed it. You know, every time, every interaction you have, keep a log of, and note your feelings, note the emotions that are coming up for you, and you'll start to pick up some of those fears, and it will also bring to life those beliefs that you have so that you can really challenge those if they're not serving you as an adult.
Great, thank you.
Again, like when we think about how much of our behavior about money is from emotion, from our households and our homes being our first school of money, it's almost thinking about how do I create my own new school, and that's with people around us. And a lot of the data shows that women are more likely to be influenced to act on financial knowledge if it comes from their family and their friends and their peers, versus men if it comes from newspapers. And that's also about the history of how women are spoken to about money versus men. But one of a really big experience for me was when I was starting out in business. I remember there's this webinar, and the webinar was all about how to manage your wealth, especially in terms of exiting as a founder and things like that. And at that time, I was like, what are these people talking about? Like, managing wealth, what do you mean? So I just turned up to be like, let's see what's going on. And I remember one of the questions they asked is, how much money do you feel you need in your life if you were to have a lump sum tomorrow? And I sat there with my notebook and I wrote, I don't know, maybe 1 million, maybe 2, maybe 3, thinking. And then we got into breakout rooms. And there were a lot of people older than me in terms of founders. They've been doing it for about 5 to 10 years. And they so confidently were like, yeah, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million. And it kind of was one of those moments where I was like, there's levels to this, And I think if you're socialized, if you know that your networks, your circles are socialized to not be talking about big numbers, that is inevitably going to have an impact on your own psychology when it comes to money and how you then see money. So this is like a perfect setup to be able to talk to other people and say, do you want to formalize this into a monthly brunch? Can we talk about it? Because putting numbers against those ambitions and goals is really important, of being able to chat to your friends and say, yeah, this is what my portfolio looks like. This is my investment ambition. This is what my lifestyle number is to live a good life, because you want to be able to actually have something tangible to then go off of in discussions.
I agree with both of you guys. You know, at the end, it's very difficult to come and add,
Yeah,
add another good tip on there.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
I'm trying my hardest, guys.
I'm going to come to you first next time.
Thank you. I'll be ready for that one. But I think what I'd add on top of that as well is I hosted a workshop the other day with a group of amazing ladies, and we were, similar to what we've been doing now, unpicking where those learned behaviors have come from. And the one thing that I said to them was to give yourself a short-term goal. So that's usually the next 1 to 3 years, and give yourself a long-term goal. So that's the next 7 to 10 years. And always the long-term goal seems unachievable. Wherever you are now, if you want to become a homeowner and you've only got £50 in your savings account, it feels like you're never going to get there. But once you have that short-term and long-term goal, you can now work backwards and put in place those baby steps. So even if you're someone who perhaps has some debts and in 7 years' time you want to be debt-free and you can't see your way out, that is now the first step. You've now begun at day one. So I would encourage you to, after this or even now, put in place some goals, a short-term and long-term, and then for your short-term goal especially, say, what's the one thing I'm going to implement in the next 6 months to help me begin to reach my short-term goal? And that will help you to slowly overcome those fears, because money can be scary. And I think none of us should sugarcoat it here. It seems scary. You know, we talk about investing, pensions, credit. You got to start covering your ears. They say, oh no, this is really scary. I don't want to talk about it. But we do need to. And it's amazing that we've got events like this, which make it so open and so comfortable to talk about.
So we've talked a little bit about how important or how influential your upbringing, what you experience as a young person, and how that will influence your money-making choices. Kia, would you be, this is a harder question, but would you be prepared to talk a little bit about your own experience of that? Because I think we all agree that these are huge influences, but I think it would be quite inspiring to hear someone who is objectively good with money to talk about their experiences of what shaped your choices.
Of course. See, I came first. Thank you. For my upbringing, I guess I was fortunate in the sense that my parents taught me a lot about money, which I know isn't common for a lot of people. But that was off the back of my parents got together when in their late teens, and they found themselves in something like £15,000 worth of debt. And my dad had worked to pay that off before they had me. So now my dad had learnt the lessons, the hard way, arguably, of how to manage money. So I was always taught the lessons at the appropriate time. So when I started getting pocket money, it was like, right, you need to save some money. You can spend some, but put some away in, your money pot. Then it was like, we're going to get your savings account. We're going to take monthly trips to the bank and see how much you've got. Then when I got to school, I started my first business. Very young, I know. I ran an empire, by the way. That's another story for another day. But Thank you. I don't like to toot my own horn, but I ran an empire. And then when I got to sixth form, it was talking about planning for university, how you're going to manage your money. I had the adequate lessons at different stages, but despite those lessons, I made a few hiccups. And I'm not shy to say that. When I was at university, I applied for a credit card, because I was like, right, it's time to be a big girl now, I want to get my credit score, I want to start building that up. So I applied for a credit card with my bank, and I heard nothing back. And everyone told me, if you hear nothing back, you're probably been rejected. So preemptively, as you do, you don't, by the way, but as you do, you apply for another credit card. Don't do this, okay? Learn from my mistakes, don't do this. So I applied for another one. Lo and behold, a day later, both were approved, both with a £1,000 limit, so £2,000 at 20. Let me tell you something, all my friends paid for nothing. They paid for nothing. Nando's on me, everything on, you're shopping, everything you got, tap in, it was me, right? But then that also meant that it was me who had to figure out how to pay that back. And that was very hard. And I remember I was so scared to tell my dad, because he knew he taught me better. And then eventually he saw one of my statements come through and he said, what, you owe how much? Anyway, that was an interesting conversation, but I finally paid that off. And I think I share that story just to say that even if you are in a household where you weren't taught about money like myself, sometimes you have to go through learn experiences. Because I knew better, but the look of the £2,000, I've never seen that in my life. So I spent that. But again, I'm not like that anymore. So I think we can be confident in knowing that that's not the case anymore. But yeah, that's how I think my upbringing has really shaped how I view money.
Thank you. So I guess moving on then from all the lessons that you've all learned, and how do we then pass that on? And I guess, Emma, you're a parent. I mean, it's a terrifying thing in so many ways. But how do we, all of these very hard-earned lessons, and as you say, your dad did, he sounds like he's an excellent man who really tried to drum that lesson home. Where do you start with younger people, and especially in today's context, which I think is different from how we all grew up? you know, for me, there was barely the internet. So where do you start with young people?
Well, firstly, it is a really different world. My children are 12 and 10, and, you know, they have mobile phones. We were talking in the green room at the back here about how their lives are influenced by a lot wider things, social media, as I've said already. I think it's really important to be their focus and not let their primary education come from outside the house. So we talk about money a lot. Lockdown was actually brilliant for my children because they saw me recording videos, and they used to do their own little YouTube channel. I've got some great videos of my child when she was 7 talking about pensions. It's brilliant, and she, word for word, she doesn't understand what she's saying, but she word for word was reiterating what I'd been talking about, and her description of investing was incredible. But I'm really passionate that we talk about things in an age-appropriate way. So the pandemic was a great time. We were talking about the changes that were going on in the world, and I said to them, you know, some companies are going to have to slow down a bit because the world's changing, but other companies are going to do really well. What do you think the companies are that are going to do well? And they were like, you know, Amazon, because everybody will be buying things and they can't get out to the shops. So we talked about things in a way that their small brains could understand. And then I kept giving them little snippets. Okay, all investing is, which is what Mummy teaches people about, is when we think companies are doing well, we buy a bit of that company. So we own a little bit of that company and we piggyback along their journey. Right? That's all they needed to know at that small age. But it gets into their brain that next time we go to McDonald's and they say, oh, Mummy, look at all the people in McDonald's. Like, they're all buying McDonald's. Like, they must be doing really well. I'm like, yeah, McDonald's is doing well. And it's just having those conversations. The biggest thing about money is it's still a taboo subject, and we don't talk about it enough. You know, we talk to our friends about their sex lives. How many of you actually know what your best friend earns? We don't talk about it like we should. Like, I'm absolutely fine that if my children were to say to me, how much do you earn? I'd tell them. I think it's just really important that we have an open and honest conversation, because many of our generation were told, don't you ask that person how much they earn, that's rude, right? But where does that leave us as women when we come to the table to ask for pay rises or to ask for, you know, evidence of the gender pay gap in the employer that we're working for? If we have an inbuilt belief that it's rude to talk about money, how can we have a fair seat at that table? So we have to be building that belief system of our children at an early age in the appropriate way, which is to just be really open and honest all the time.
And is there an age, are they ever too young? No?
I don't think so. Like I say, there's age-appropriate ways of talking to children, but I would never, and I'm really conscious, I have made my own mistakes. I will say to my children things and I'll say, oh God, what have I said that for? You know, it's not true. You know, we're really guilty as adults sometimes of saying all sorts of things. A lot of the language that we use about money is negative, and I would really encourage you to think about this as you go forward, like really tracking, like I say, the thoughts that you have, but also the way that you talk about money. And it's so easy for that to transcend into the conversations we have, not just with children, but in sight of those little ears. So really just being aware of things is so important.
And what about young people who are perhaps, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, who perhaps haven't had healthy conversations at home, are on TikTok all the time? How do you infiltrate their world and speak in their language and talk to them in a way where they might adopt some more healthier money habits? Nafisa or Kia?
So I do taekwondo, and a lot of the members at the club are in their teens, or like from the 14 to 19-year-olds. And something that really shocks me is, in our generation growing up, what our parents would tell us to do was be a doctor, be an engineer, be like all the safe and stable things. And I'm really shocked that that hasn't actually changed from one generation to another. And this is because they're going into a school curriculum that hasn't changed that much. And so I think the biggest thing, like if you meet a 17-year-old, they actually really want to make a lot of money because they're so exposed to what money can do for them. And they're so exposed to what money can buy, the experiences they can have, the nice shoes they can have, and the clothes they can have. And so I think the biggest thing, and I've got 4 nephews and a niece as well, and we talk about money as well. And I think the biggest thing to expose young people to is the different ways in which you can make money, and how actually there are traits in people that can go on to make them a living. Like, most of the time when you meet a woman who does public speaking, she was a chatty patty at school, right? And she probably got in trouble for being a chatty patty and distracting others and things like that. And I think it's being able to look at young people and give them accessibility into more possibilities. And I say that for even adults as well. A lot of the times I meet people who they say that my book is the first business book that they've read because they've not seen it as something for themselves. And so if we're able to create points of accessibility, and TikTok does that really well, you can find people making money from the most, like the pool guy. Anyone follow the pool guy? Yeah, he like cleans pools for a living, right? And that's how he makes his money. And so I think exposing them to the broadest sort of spectrum of how you can make money is a really good way to then set them up to think about money.
Lots of nodding from you, Kia.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you've been saying, Nafisa. I have a brother who's, how old is he now? Going to be 21, so he's 20. And we've had conversations for years. And anyone would think that he has struck gold, having me as a sister, right?
Yeah.
In Bill, ask me anything you want. I'm on hand. Wake me up in the morning. I'll answer your questions, right? He never used me. Never. And I remember one day he woke up and he knocked on my door. He said, Kia, guess what I'm going to do today? I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to start investing. I've been telling him for years, by the way, how it works, everything. He just in one ear, out the other. But because he's on social media and people tell him who isn't his boring sister, he's now taking it in. But I think it's what you've been saying. So my brother has done his fair share of get rich quick schemes. You know, you see it online. I'm going to do drop shipping, Kia. I'm going to order stuff from China. I'm going to drop ship. I'm going to make my millions. He's done it. He's failed, right? He's done many things and failed. And my brother's always been good at drawing. Always been good at drawing. And I said to him, why don't you look into doing that? Graphic design, you know, I can teach you how to do that because I can also do it as well. So I can teach you, I can give you all the equipment, all the tools. And he wasn't interested at all until the last 6 months. And he came to me, he said, you know what, Kia? He had to hang his head in shame. He hung it in shame. And he said, you know what, Kia, I think I'm ready to learn. Because he understood that when you're online and you see a lot on TikTok, if someone's telling you, I've made millions and I can teach you too, that's probably how they've made their millions. They've made it through selling courses like this. A lot of people said, yeah, it's true. Because that's what it is. Because people who make millions don't sit there and say, I'll teach you, by the way. Let's do a one-on-one. I don't see Jeff Bezos doing that. People don't do that. So the people who say that we can make you millions, we can make you 6 figures in a month, that's how they're making their money, through selling courses to you. So it's down to you to be smarter. And like you said, I believe everyone's got a skill that they can monetize or something that they can use. And I think everyone thinks, oh, I'm not the best at this. And I always say, you don't need to be the best at something. You just need to be better than most at something. So like, I am terrible with organization, terrible. But there's people who are better than me at managing emails, at organizing stuff, who I would probably hire to manage my stuff. They may not be the best, but they're better than me. And that's enough to get hired. So I think once you have that in your mind, then you're able to reflect on your own skills and say, actually, I can do this. I can go into that. I can copyright. I've got good voice for radio. I'm going to do voiceover. And whatever it is, you can actually look into what you've got yourselves.
Yeah, really smart advice. Moving on a bit to talk a little bit about how we juggle living in the moment and then saving for tomorrow, which is something I really struggle with. And sort of how we can do that, especially when living in the moment is getting more expensive, and saving is harder and harder. And kind of cozy tips of telling you just to put away that money just feels harder and harder to do. That being said, do you have any tips on how we do that, how we strike that balance?
I can jump in here quickly if you want. So I want to jump in because I literally came back from holiday a day ago. I was in Zanzibar, so I feel like I'm a good person to tell you that I like to save and spend. You know, life's about enjoyment, but also being smart. And I think you should never, especially when you're young, I don't believe in depriving yourself of memories just to get to the next stage. So obviously, if you have a goal in mind, if you're trying to save for a house, it means a year you've got to put down things, stop ordering takeaway, then that's fine. But I don't believe that you should fully turn down all experiences just because you're trying to reach a goal. So what I would say is, what I always try to implement is to make sure that you've got some sort of savings going. So pick a percentage that you're going to save each time you get paid. It can be 5%, 10%. You can pick an amount if that's easier if you're someone who's on a variable income. Maybe you work part-time somewhere. But pick a percentage, and that's the amount that you always put away. But alongside that, I also put away money into my fund. So that is the money that I use to do things like traveling, which I love. And I don't feel bad about it. I'm not dipping into my savings to travel. It's a pot of money that I've set aside from my normal savings, to go and do the things that I want. So I think once you realize that you can actually have fun, once you plan it into your budget, and also save for your goals, then things feel a lot easier, because you should see the world. And as someone who's seen the world quite a bit, I encourage everyone to see the world. But whatever your passion is, make sure you're putting away that money, so you don't say, oh, you know what, I took out money from my savings, I shouldn't have done it. And everyone tells themselves that lie, that you're going to put it back. Whoever puts their money back in savings, hands up. The hands are down, because no one ever replaces their savings. So instead of trying to deceive yourself and trying to kid yourself you're going to put it back, just have a separate pot for your fund, call it whatever you want, and that's a pot of money alongside your savings for your goal that is dedicated to you doing your passion, buying what you want, traveling the world, whatever it is for you.
Can I jump in here? I think it's really easy to sit here and for us to say, do a bit of both. But the reality is we've all been young, and life feels like it's more for the living, I think, when you're young. Especially talking from personal experience, before I had children, I was a yes girl to everything. But the reality of that is that if we don't start thinking about the future until later on, it becomes a much harder ask. So if we think about something like pensions, if we start early on in our 20s, or as soon as we are starting to earn a regular income, we can put away a little bit, and the benefit of compound interest will make that small amount grow over time. If you roughly assume that money kind of doubles well invested, and this is not financial advice, but roughly doubles every 10 years, the difference between you starting at 20 and the difference between you starting at 30 could be a pension pot that's half the size if you live life for the moment during your 20s and don't start till you're 30. Now, for anybody sitting in the audience that are going, oh gosh, I started a bit late, the best time to start is when you're young. The second best time to start is right now. So if you're sitting there and you maybe haven't prioritised your future as much as you realise through your ongoing education now that you should, there's loads of great tools out there. So that one of the main sponsors here today, PensionBee, they've got a great calculator on their website. So you can go in and pop in how much pension pot you've got right now, what you can contribute on a monthly basis or as a lump sum, and it will give you an idea as to what that looks like at the point in time that you can specify when you're looking to retire. So it then gives you, as Kia was talking about, that reverse engineering of what do I need to do now? What do I need to start doing on a monthly basis to enable me to get to a point down the track where I've got that pot of money that's going to enable me to retire, which, let's be honest, ladies, if you don't save for your later life, how are you ever going to stop working? And that's the shock tactic. We cannot stop working unless we have money there to enable us to do so.
And Nafisa, how did you balance that with starting and running a business? That sort of.
Yeah, I would say so. I've been running a business for 8 years, and we raised investment quite quickly into it. And I spent the first couple of years seeing all of my peers who were in jobs, building a lot of wealth, building their deposits to go and get a house and things like that and all of that. And for me, actually, it wasn't a lot till a few years in where I was actually able to see money and be able to do something with it. And so I think sometimes you will feel the pressure of other peers and what they're going after. But I knew my priorities at that time was to get this business off the ground. And I think business is actually one of the most transformational ways to create wealth for yourself and to be able to create that extra disposable income, which can then contribute to your pension, can then contribute to investment portfolios. And it's a really difficult time at the moment as well because of what we're seeing in the job markets and things like that. But I'm really passionate about businesses being, especially for women, because we're often in structures and environments that are capping our potential, that are meaning that there is an earning potential for us, especially if you then think about mothers and pregnancy penalties and things like that. So for me, it was understanding, like, these are my goals. This is the lane that I'm in. I'm not trying to buy a house and find that deposit. I'm trying to build a business and diversify in that way. And so I think it's also, again, being socialized around people who are on that same track with you, because I'd sit in conversations where people are on that very linear track, and it can make you feel like maybe I'm not doing the right thing with money. But you have to be able to surround yourself with founders who get it, founders who also understand that financial sacrifice. And for me as well, I feel like my key strategy in business when starting out in personal finance, coming from the home that I did, was just save it, don't spend, and that strategy it's going to allow you to survive, but it's only going to help you get so far. And so then you need to have a strategy that allows growth and allows thriving. And sometimes the very difficult reality is there is just not enough money on the table to look for how can I then thrive, which then brings you to, okay, bigger existential questions of what am I going to do for work? How do I increase my earning potential? How do I, and I don't want to push hustle culture and that we should all have 6 revenue streams. Absolutely not. But there is a reality of looking at our finances and understanding logically where can we get to.
I mean, something you've all said that's really struck to me is a kind of constant analysis of where you're at, what your money's doing, what you want. I mean, is that something you individually partake in? Do you kind of have a little meeting with yourself when you're like, right, is that how you work?
Money dates. Money dates happen in our house.
Tell me about a money date. What happens?
It's something I teach my clients as well. I think it's really important to have a vision. Like anything, if you don't know what the goalposts are, and Kia's already talked about setting goals, having that kind of life goal or life goals, I think a lot of people get fixated on money, and money is an enabler. Money just enables us to live the kind of life that we want to live, and each and every one of you has got a vision of what that good life is for you that's different to the person sat on your left and your right. So getting really clear on what it is that you're aiming for is the starting point. And so many people don't do that because of this FOMO, because of this, vision that we should be doing X, Y, and Z. But having that clarity of what you're aiming for is the starting point, and then being able to check in on that is just really important. If we don't have the vision, what's the point in the check-ins? We're just left looking around us at everybody else. So really spending some time on getting clear on what it is that you're...
Sorry, that was the alarm.
That's our time.
We've got to wrap up.
But a money date really is a tool to enable you to do that, to sit down, if you're in a partnership, sit down with your partner and look, are our goals aligned? I've got my personal goals, we've got our joint goals. Are they still the same as they were 3 months ago, or have different things happened to each of us that are putting them slightly out of whack? Do we need to work together? And you can do this on your own. You don't have to be in a partnership to have a money date. You can sit down with yourself. But the head in the sand attitude doesn't work for finances. I always say money needs to be your best friend. If you ignored your best friend, if you didn't take them out for dinner, if you just told them to sod off all the time, they wouldn't want to hang out with you. And it's exactly the same with money. We've really got to spend time with it, making it our friend, so that it comes back round to us in a positive way.
Thank you. Okay, as my phone has alerted us, we are almost out of time. We have time for 2 questions, brief questions, if there are any questions. Anyone? Or has our panel just been so brilliantly informative that they've answered all potential questions? Oh, is there one? Oh, up there. Up there? Oh, hi.
Oh, the mic is... the mic is making its way up to
running.
you.
It's coming to
The
you.
mic is... I can see the mic running up the stairs. Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't do that. So that's
Hi, I've got a question.
Great.
So, this money date, which is an excellent concept. Suppose you have got a partner who is not here, who doesn't believe in things like, money. How can you have a money date with, with a partner who doesn't believe in this sort of thing, thinks this is a waste of time, waste of space? I know it's a difficult question, but this is what I've toggled with all my life.
I do a lot of my work. Individuals come to me, and I don't know why I'm holding my thing now. I often say to people, who are you doing this work for? People, start off on the journey on their own, and they gradually realise that if they're going through life with somebody, it's really important to be aligned when it comes to money. Otherwise, we all know that money is one of the most controversial topics in relationships. It's one of the leading causes of relationship breakdown. So recognising that you both have this different lens that I talked about earlier is really important. And being able to get your partner to see life through your lens, not change them, not change their lens, but for them to understand why you see money in the way that you do, is the first kind of stepping stone to be able to get somebody to come along on the journey with you in a way that doesn't create friction or conflict. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to potentially write a letter about all your earliest, or whatever. You could have a conversation, but I often find it's less confrontational if you can write a letter. So get down all of the earliest kind of memories that you have of money. And it might be that my sister stole all my money out of my piggy bank. And so I believe that, if I save money, other people can spend it for me. And that little belief transcends into adulthood in terms of behaviours where that person is not a saver, they're a spender when their income comes in, because they believe that if they don't spend it, somebody else might. Right, so just little simple things about what you were taught about school, about money when you were younger, and just being able to swap those letters, it gives you the opening into a conversation. Because simply telling somebody you're wrong, my way of viewing money is right, is not right. There is no one best way of viewing how we approach our finances. And I do a lot of work on money personalities. There is not a best money personality. Everybody has the ability to deal with money well. It's about recognising your own strengths and recognising your challenges. And it might be that your partner has strengths that you don't have. So being able to see that and work to each other's strengths and help each other overcome challenges in a way that doesn't create conflict. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Emma. Any more? Okay, one at the back, and then otherwise my alarm will go off again. Yeah, can we get a mic to this lady at the back here with her arm in the air?
Just wanted to ask, what's the one thing each of you wish you had done earlier when it comes to money?
Good question. Thank you. Wow. Kia.
I had to think about this. So, my thing. Okay, let me give you a brief rundown on my empire. So when I was in secondary school, I sold cookies and donuts, and I was making £250 a week profit. You guys didn't believe it was an empire. I had to tell you, it was an empire. Yeah, it was an empire. And at that point, like I said, I was getting told the necessary lessons to do with my age, not to do with what I was doing, how much money I was making. So I never got taught about investing. To be fair, I was too young, but I could have done it for my parents. And I started investing when I was 20. Because that's what my parents told me. No, I actually called my dad and I said, Dad, you invest. How do you do it? To be fair, his answer was very archaic, and I found a more modern way of how to invest. But if I reflect back, I wish I started at 18, or I wish I started just a lot sooner, because as you mentioned, the power of compounding, Emma, it's just so important to get your money working for you. And I think back and I think about how hard I was working to earn that kind of money, which again, at the time was foreign to me. £250 was money, but I didn't really understand how much money I was making. And it's only when I got to university, where I had little to no money, that I realized, you know what, I'm working so hard. I'm working part-time at different places. I wish I could have my money working for me. That's when I explored investing. But anyone, if you haven't explored it because it seems scary and it seems frightful, I get that, but make it your first step to start to learn the terms. Understand what a bond is, what's a share, what's a stock, what's an ETF. Once you understand that, then it feels less daunting. But if you do want to start investing, I would say make that one of your first things. And I wish I did that sooner, I'd say.
I think for me, it was not setting a clear money goal early enough. And I talk about this in the book, where I'd been running the business for a couple of years, and I kind of got to the point where I was like, yeah, we've got money in the bank and we can keep ticking along, but how do we like really thrive and really grow? And I remember saying to myself that year that if I don't make 100K this year, I'm closing the business down. And I almost had to threaten myself to like get myself into action. And I really genuinely meant it. Like I almost was like, let's go through the motions and make that work. And it was fascinating to see how suddenly, because I had that focus, it wasn't really about learning anything new. It was doing more of what was working, less of what wasn't, and talking to more people, networking, socializing, all of those sorts of things. And in that year, we made 100K from one partnership, which was,
amazing.
you know, suddenly, because you've created the possibility for yourself, the possibility opens up. And so and then I've also done that for my personal finances. And sometimes you're scared to set the goal because where you are now versus where you want to be, you're like, it's not mathing, it don't make sense. So what's the point of setting that goal? But it's made me be even more ambitious with the numbers that I put down to paper, because you then kind of hold yourself to like, I have to figure out some way, and it might be actually I need to get up to scratch now with what are all the different ways I can then make money. How do I put money into a pension? It might be thinking about your net wealth as well, about what are all the different ways I can increase that. And so I'd really, really, really encourage you before you leave today to put that number down. What is the number that you want in your life between now and next year? When you put everything together, your savings, your earning, your investing, your fund money, because you have to be able to visualize a possibility that is beyond where you are today.
I've forgotten what I was going to say. No, I haven't. I was so enthralled. My biggest regret is not appreciating as a pre-child female the financial penalties of motherhood, and when I went on to my first maternity leave, my husband and I had pension pots that were equivalent. I thought naively I was going to have a child, go back into work. I never went back to corporate life. I hit some of the common penalties. So I had an extended maternity leave, so time out of work. I then went back part-time, it's another penalty. I'm now self-employed, don't get employer contributions into a pension. Like all the classic things that as women, when we have children, we tend to be hit by some, if not all of these penalties. And if I'd have appreciated that earlier, I think, and I know Claire spoke about this in the panel earlier, but I think having that knowledge while we're younger means that we can do something about it. Like I actually earned really good money. I could have afforded to put more into my pension and front-loaded it in my 20s so that when I had that time off, it didn't have as much of an impact as it has had to me. So for anybody that resonates with this, getting that knowledge of the choices that you make in your 20s and how they can, not make or break, that's the wrong word, but the impact that they can have if and when life changes, which it does. And we can never have that crystal ball in terms of where life's going to go. But the earlier you can make good choices, the better the impact down the track.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed that and learned so much. So please join me and give our panellists a big round of applause.